Hello, good morning, or good afternoon.
Good afternoon. It's afternoon, Roy.
How's it going?
Good. How you doing?
Pretty good.
Good. Welcome, everyone. We all survived the snowpocalypse that lasted nearly 24 hours.
So it's melting now, thank goodness.
Right. And I'm so excited for our show today because we have the fabulous Carson St. Clair. Hi, Carson. Welcome. If you don't know, and you should know, Carson is a famous burlesque performer with the Dark Diamonds. Is that correct, right? Dark Diamonds.
It is. Dark Diamonds.
It's the first all POC burlesque troupe in Seattle.
Yep.
Yeah, they are fabulous. I've been missing being able to see performances like yours for the past year. Sad. And it's been super sad. And Carson is also a hairstylist at Jean Juarez, and she's the Divas hairstylist as well. So we do get the pleasure of seeing Carson on a regular basis, not performing. I mean,
But still live and in person.
Right, which is not we're not seeing a lot of people live and in person lately, are we?
No. That's why we're doing a video show.
That's right.
Just to recap, Roy, Powell, Kim Colaprete. We're with Team Diva Real Estate and Coldwell Banker Bain. This is our weekly, soon to be monthly after this episode,
right?
Show of the episode of the Roy and Kim Show.
Yeah, thanks for
introducing us, Carson.
Yeah, thanks for introducing us, Roy. Just in case people don't know who we are.
Well, there's still a chance.
Well, we're super excited to have you on the show today. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Okay, we're going to talk about all kinds of fun things, but first, I want to hear about your performer, how you got started, why you chose burlesque, and what it's like to be a performer in COVID, which is kind of rough for a lot of folks that we know are out there trying to make it
for real. So I got started doing burlesque because I originally started doing pinup modeling for fundraising events for a lot of veterans groups with my partner who is a veteran. And it kind of evolved from there. I met a bunch of people who are pretty well known within Seattle burlesque who really encouraged me to step out of my comfort zone to try burlesque. And so I went to Miss Indigo Blues Academy of Burlesque.
Oh, to learn how to titty twirl?
I did. I can do a bunch of different ways. And so I took their 6-week class and was taught by Inga and Ruby Mimosa, who are really dear friends, and I love them so much. And that's kind of my intro to burlesque. And it'll be 3 years in October since I made my debut.
Oh, wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I feel like
I'm still kind of a baby.
I know. 2 years. I mean, I didn't think it was it seemed like you've been doing this forever. Like you just seem like you're a natural performer, right? Like you were born to be a burlesque performer.
Like it. Sometimes I'm like, only 3 years? Okay.
Yeah. And one of those years has been a COVID year.
I call it my artist in residence year.
That's right.
My art,
Yes.
my apartment. But yeah, COVID it's kind of surreal. I've taken it as a chance to kind of step back and just not be up for public consumption for a little bit, which has been really nice. Especially being a burlesque performer who does burlesque full-time, has a full-time job on top of that,
right,
and then does part-time hair and wedding styling.
Right.
I've got so many hustles. It was nice to kind of take a step back. But I do really, really miss live performance. I have been enjoying seeing how burlesque has shifted to digital media, which has been really fun. It's just not my performance. I need an audience.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I think it's great that we've seen performers be able to make that shift. And I think that's, we talked about it, like the three of us talked about it, about how digital performance is something that we're a little bit over, but we're also glad it's here, and we hope it stays around because it's a good intermixing for different reasons, and we can go back and talk about that. But yeah, I would imagine as a burlesque performer, the audience, I mean, I can't imagine for any performer the audience isn't important, but specifically for burlesque because it's such an intimate art form.
It is. It's super intimate, and you feed off of that crowd and like the cheering, and also a lot of us interact with the crowd.
Right.
Like, I have been known to go out in the audience and just make out with someone, which, you know, you can't do during COVID.
No, you cannot. Wow, girl.
Like to get through that camera into the, into the next house.
That must help with the tips. Because I know
it does.
Burlesque performers like drag performers thrive and survive on tips from the audience, right? That's a huge part of the performance.
Especially in Seattle, tipping at a burlesque show is a new thing. It used to be that you never tipped at burlesque shows.
Oh,
here, at least in the Seattle, I'm not sure about other, communities, but in Seattle, a lot of people didn't have tipping shows. And I think it was because audience members felt kind of weird throwing money at people taking their clothes off.
Right. Right. I mean,
give me your dollars.
I don't feel money. I don't feel weird throwing money at people who are taking their, I'm like, go, you have the balls to do that. Here is my money. Right.
Right. And I think that's been a nice kind of shift in Seattle's scene in the last couple years, as you're seeing a push towards, live cash shows where you tip the performers. I'm also known to put money in my mouth, which you can't do during COVID.
No. No.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
I may rethink that practice
down the road. Yeah, right.
As we joke about in our house, that's not coming back.
Right. I mean,
not at all.
Okay, now this is a total side tangent, but this is a really interesting thought process about how will COVID have changed performance where burlesque and drag and let's go boys and girls are tipped, with money where there's physical, you're sticking money in someone's, G-string or something like that. I mean, I know with burlesque you don't do that because it's hands up. A lot of people.
I do
it. Interesting. Okay.
Right before we went live, we were talking about the court system, and I don't know if you remember when we went to the few court functions, they would have a basket up front. And tipping was all performative, where you had to walk down the aisle and then present your tip to the performer out in front of them and then bow and then walk away. And that was a small part, but very much a part of the whole performance was just the tipping part.
Right. It is. But I mean, I think a lot of drag performers really don't mind being physically tipped. What did Tommy say?
Sorry, Tommy's comment was the imperial court system, not the county/federal. Yes, no.
I would love to
those
see
tips are entirely different.
Let's clarify. We're talking about the Imperial Sovereign Court of Seattle, which is a queer, gay, monolithic institution that's been around for 50 plus years. And our dear Michael Donatella is one of the reigning empresses, or not reigning, ex-reigning, I guess, empress, Olympia 45. She was, empress at one point. So yes, not the federal court. Tipping the judges. Oh, thank you for that. Good.
That'd be so great. I object. Here's my 20.
Right. Yep. Thanks for not sending me to jail for that, DUI. Here's my $50.
I love it. That's awesome.
I bet we're one of the few people that has to clarify that conversation when we talk about the court.
Yeah.
So I do wonder how COVID's going to reimagine, is this going to really impact people who perform like that and rely on tips, how they get their tips? And it's going to be an interesting shift. Cause I know for a lot of the burlesque performers, we just do the throw the rain colors on them and not physically touch. So
yeah, which is also really I love a shower of money.
Who doesn't?
I mean, I see a lot of shows that are moving towards tip buckets, and they have someone where you just put the money in a bucket, which is also nice because some people get really shy about going up and handing a performer money.
Yeah.
Which I mean, I love when people walk up to me, hand me a tip, because then I get to like bring them into it a little bit, you know, a little fourth wall break.
Right.
That's really fun. But I think we'll see a lot of shift to like performers showing their Venmo or their Cash App little tag beforehand.
Oh, right. Yeah. That's a great idea. So have you seen the burlesque community make this transition into the digital world overall?
A little bit, yeah. Like digital money or like digital media.
Digital media. I mean, digital performance.
Oh, yeah, so much digital performance. You know, we did our first show, and I think right the week after COVID, I did the show with you and a bunch of other performers online. And I think that was the first digital show in the city. We were pioneers.
I know our friend Raja, we had a weird, our friend Raja, who's a dancer who a lot of you know, we've talked about Raja, is a fairly famous performer in New York. And we were like trapped in the house for like weeks on end. And his husband got COVID while they were staying with us. And it was totally weird. And then we were like one night just hanging around, like drinking and eating pizza. And we're like, we need to do something fun. Let's put on a show. And we're like, okay.
That was a really fun experience to like dip my toe into it. But yeah, we've seen, especially Seattle Burlesque has really taken off with digital shows. And some of our big shows have switched to a really amazing digital format. I know we talked a little bit about Burlesque Karaoke, which is a huge new event that's I think it's a year old now, and it's produced by Ruby Mimosa, and it normally happens monthly at Queer Bar up on the hill, and it's karaoke and burlesque combined, where your performers have to improv burlesque to whatever random karaoke song is being sung at the time. Doesn't that sound wacky? I mean, the most fun you'll ever have at a show.
And they're doing that online. So
they're doing it all digital.
Zoom now. You're zooming in and karaokeing? Is that
through your computer? Yep. It's the DJ, or the KJ, I guess is what you call it, is Baby Band Beasley. And so what you do is you pull up your music on your computer, the karaoke version of whatever song you want to sing. And then when it's your turn to sing, you share the sound with your Zoom meeting so everyone can hear it. And then your performer performs to your song.
Cool.
It's super fun.
We need to go. Oh, hi, Amy. Amy just popped in. Hi, Amy.
Hi.
Amy's one of our fans. We have not seen her in a while. She's been busy, but happy to have her pop in. If you have a question for Carson, Amy, pop it on the screen. Yeah, we should get Remington in on that burlesque karaoke.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so much fun. And then what I love about it is that you see performers that aren't performing. You get to see everyone that in your community in like the group chat, and that's where we all have fun. The people on screen are just the performer.
Have you done it?
And so it's a really fun. I haven't performed in it, but I have sung for karaoke.
Oh,
yeah. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment. There's not enough space.
Oh, that's right. That's what you said. So you said you did do some performances, but you did a live performance outside.
I did it in the summer. I did a live performance at Bad Jimmy's Brewing in Ballard, where the audience sits in the beer garden, masked and socially distanced, and the performers perform inside the brewery behind, like under this garage door, kind of, faux proscenium. And you're like 20 feet away, so you're really well distanced, and you perform there while everyone's seated. And it was such a good experience to have that energy from a live crowd and get to, feel all of that love and have dollars rain upon me.
That's fabulous.
That's
yeah. And just to like see people that I haven't seen at that point. It'd been 6 months, I think.
Oh, wow.
Since we started lockdown. And so it was so good to see other performers like live.
I can imagine. So our pal Amy said that she used to do burlesque.
Ooh.
Debauchery, and her name was Gemma Lusterius. Have you heard of Gemma Lusterius?
That's a good name.
That is a good name. I'm gonna go check that out, Amy. That's awesome. So what have you seen other creative things that the burlesque community has been doing besides like burlesque karaoke online?
I think a lot of burlesque performers are now doing, I think another thing that's really, it's digital still, but it's live streaming. So you'll have performers, I've done a live streamed show where performers are all in a theater together. And it's just the performers, and then it's streamed to Zoom or whatever your digital platform is, so that you can still have that, you can have the beautiful stage lighting, you can have the beautiful sounds, and you get a little bit of an audience because all the other performers are there. But it's also a great way for digital performance to help keep our venues going.
That's a good point. We've been talking about the lack of, how the struggle is also with not just performers being paid, but venues closing all over the place.
So many venues are closing. It's so sad.
And you said it before. Sorry to interrupt. I didn't mean to do that. But I know you said it before, but it just clicked in my mind of like, of course, it's probably extremely awkward to be performing in front of like just a camera and nothing else.
It is a little weird. And
the only feedback you're getting is from tiny pictures on the screen. Yep. Maybe not, depending on if audience members are sharing their screen. That's got to be wildly difficult.
Right.
I mean, it's super challenging. It's a fun challenge, but it is, especially if you're someone who can really feeds off the crowd's energy, like myself. It can be really, challenging because it's just my husband, and my two animals just being like, "Mom's weird." What's she doing?
Great.
What's Mom doing?
I mean, I think that is a really interesting thing about burlesque is that, and I think, like I said, everyone who performs feeds off the audience. But when you're like performing in the ballet, yes, you feed off the fact that the audience is clapping. The audience is so far away from you, and
you can't see their faces.
You're not interacting. The same at the symphony, and and even with like modern dance. I mean, there's some that's like you said, break the fourth wall, but a lot of it is still. There's a lot of like distance between you, right? But burlesque and drag are some of the art forms where like playing with the audience and interacting with the audience and having that moment is super right. It's super hard to do without.
It's an expectation of the art form,
right?
Like it's kind of not a requirement, but it's expected that that's what's going to happen.
Sure.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean,
I think the one thing that's really cool too about the switch to digital is that you're getting to see, like, you're losing that, touch on touch intimacy, but you're getting to see a lot of the times this intimate look into a performer's house and see what their like creative space looks like.
Whoa.
I mean, I dodged one burlesque karaoke where Inga was performing and she hopped in her shower and turned it on.
Oh my God.
That's amazing.
Talk about like taking your art to the next level, right? And you can't do that if you're on stage, but in your house, you could do crazy stuff like that.
Right? You can make all the mess you want in your own house because you have to pick it up.
Right.
And so that's really interesting is getting to see performers perform in their home and how they use their space. Another person who's really good at performing in their home is Javon Stratton, who's been known to use like the motorcycles in the garage and her kitchen and everything.
I love watching Jamie and her crazy like COVID Instagram antics. Like she's so good outfits and the like her deck walks. I'm like
yes,
for her like patio walks and her different outfits.
Yeah, and so that's also been a really fun creative way is to see, especially not just digital shows, but how performers are creating digital content. Like TikTok is huge now.
Right.
Burlesque TikTok is amazing.
Burlesque TikTok. And these are great because it's really, one of the things we've always been talking about on the show and we talk about all the time is how it's super important in spite of the fact that you can't go to a show that you support performers. And then you find any way possible to support the performers. And if you're following them on Instagram or seeing a digital show, even if you're paying a ticket for the digital show, finding out how you can Venmo or tip the performers, through Venmo or Cash App some way. So you're supporting the performer and the venue as well, because y'all need support, right?
Yep. I know a lot of the digital shows will put up, where you can tip, or they'll pull tips and then split them. But even if you can't go to a show, and you have a performer that you love, reach out, like DM them and be like, hey, how can I, support you? It doesn't have to be monetarily. Either sharing their content helps. And especially with the new algorithms for like Instagram, just saving their content, like liking, interacting, and saving their content helps push it up further, so more people see that.
Smart.
Oh, that's good to know. Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's just so important, because I know that a lot of bigger venues or bigger performance or like art scenes have grants and foundations that support them even through tough times like this, but small artists don't have that they don't have that.
Yeah. And there are some less, there's a lot of productions that, thank God, get those grants. Like I think we were talking about What the Funk Festival.
Oh, right.
And they do get a grant, which thank God, because that's a new festival that's emerging, and a way to keep that funded. But small performers, even performers I know that only perform full time, aren't getting those grants because they're not a registered nonprofit.
Right. So tell us a little bit about What the Funk Festival is, since you brought it up. And I know we're going to put the link for all these cool festivals and shows that we're going to talk about, but tell us a little bit about that in particular.
So What the Funk Festival is a festival in Seattle that premiered in 2019 in the summer, put on by Mix Puxaplenty and Rebecca Davis, who we all adore. And it is an all POC burlesque festival that is every act has to be to funk music.
Cool. Some
sort of funk music. And it's, I think, biannual, so it's coming back this year, and we're not sure if it's going to be online or in person. But that will be happening.
And when does that happen? When does that happen usually?
August, usually.
Oh, August. So there's a possibility it'll be live. There
could be a possibility of like a scaled down audience. And depending on, safety of performers and safety of audience, it could be digital. I'm not sure. But it's a really amazing festival. It's so much fun. It happens over a weekend. It's 3 different days. In 2019, it was in 3 different venues, which was really fun. Sorry, 2 different venues, which was really fun. And just seeing these amazing, POC performers from all over the country come in, dancing to funk music of any sort, was really fun. And it was just such a wonderful, powerful experience to sit in an audience and see an entire festival of all brown and black bodies.
Oh my God, that sounds amazing. I'm curious how you've seen, I know you've been really active in the Black Lives Matter movement since it started. I'm curious, not just like how have you gotten active in that movement, but also have you seen that movement start to impact the performance world, and in particular burlesque in Seattle? I mean, obviously you guys have been around since before this happened, but have you seen a shift or an impact of the Black Lives Matter movement on performance art and on the art scene in general and the burlesque scene in general?
Absolutely. So during all of the summer protests, my partner and I my partner is a veteran and was a combat medic. And so he trained me, and we worked as street medics through all of the protests, which was an amazing experience to get to be out there, at the chop, and on a lot of the marches, getting to see everything. And I know a lot of other burlesque performers trained themselves as medics, and even coordinated with performers from Alaska to teach, basic first aid classes.
Cool.
So that people would know what to do. But yeah, you've seen a huge impact in the Seattle burlesque community as far as a push for even shows that are mostly all white cast to donate a proceed of their funds to, Black organizations, and they're promoting Black businesses, which is really great. And you're seeing a huge push. Burlesque has always been a very diverse art, but because of our society, it's usually thin, white, able bodies that you see on the stage, because that's the societal beauty standard.
Right.
And so you're seeing a huge push within at least the Seattle community to really change that and have true, legitimate, non-token representation of fat, queer, disabled, Black, brown bodies in those casts.
And like you said, non-token, right? Not just like the one person, but like all the diversity everywhere, all the time, right?
Absolutely. Because you've seen shows where it's like they have all white people and they have maybe what they have, they have the gay,
right?
They have the black person and they have the fat person.
Right.
And you're like, okay, cool. There's one of each. Nice that you checked off that
right.
That
You checked all those boxes, right?
And so you're seeing a huge shift, and it's still it's huge, but it's still slowly going.
Mm-hmm.
But you're starting to see that push and that lack of acceptance of all white casts.
Right. And do you think that's gone beyond burlesque?
I think you're starting to slowly see that go beyond burlesque. You're seeing it in the opera, quite a bit, and the ballet. And I think that happened before summer protests. Thank God, it was starting to happen before that. I know we talked a little bit about the opera, but the opera is starting to have these amazing conversations about classic operas like Madame Butterfly, which is traditionally done in yellowface.
Right.
And how to still bring that traditional culture to it without making it offensive. And they're bringing in Japanese people to help kind of make sure it accurately represents the culture.
That's
and they're doing talks with, when they do a performance that has a significant culture in it, they bring in someone of that culture to help make sure that it's not, or to at least have talks about why it was done this way in the past and why it's performed this way in the present and how it's shifting. It's really cool.
That is fascinating. I read a really interesting article, which is, it was so fascinating to me because it seems like such a basic, simple thing, but it was an article about this Black woman ballerina who was talking about getting her first pair of brown point shoes, and what what an amazing experience it was to have a company who made brown point shoes, because her whole ballet career she's been wearing pink point shoes and having to you
have to paint them
right. And I'm like, oh my God, that is so crazy. That this is something that's that is all of a sudden people have now started to think about this, and that I just assumed that they would make point shoes to match everyone's skin tone, but they don't.
No, I remember I danced all through elementary school and up until college, and I had to dye all of my nude underwear, which is cool, it's peach. Thanks.
Right. Thanks. Right. Sorry,
and so I'm really good at mixing my own batch of dye to dye my tights that had to be skin toned, my underwear, my point shoes. Because in ballet, it's the long, beautiful line of your foot, and a pink shoe on especially a body that's darker than mine. It's a huge contrast, and it ruins that line.
Mm-hmm. So you would dye your own tights, because they didn't even make tights that were
Nope. The longest time, tights came in pink or black, and that was it.
Wild.
And now they start to make more, skin tone friendly.
Isn't that something we don't even think about, stuff like that? And that's just shows you the nature of that culture of the arts, that it's so steeped in whiteness and people having pink skin or pale skin, that it's taken till 2021 for someone to come up with a pair of brown shoes. That's a huge thing. I'm like, oh my God, never thought about that.
Even as a burlesque performer, trying to find a nude bra that is my nude that doesn't cost $75.
Right.
I make it myself or cover it myself is sometimes a nightmare.
Michael just popped in saying,
"Hi, Michael."
what Hi, Michael. He says, hi, Carson. And he made a comment about how there's that's a drag problem as well. That there's a lot of, because we know that there's a ton of POC drag performers, right?
Absolutely.
Some of the most famous drag performers are people of color. So I feel like that these
chest pieces,
right?
Like chest plates that they wear hip pads,
right?
That they'll have like 87 pairs of tights over.
Oh my God, the things you don't think about. So let's talk a little bit more about this digital transition, because I think when the three of us were chatting, we were talking about like our thoughts about, I think a lot of people are tired of digital performance and of being online because they're on Zoom calls and they're doing stuff like this. But I know we had this really interesting conversation. Like, what do you think digital performance has the positives of transitioning or being able to use this medium to present art to people?
Well, I think the great thing about digital burlesque is it makes it widely accessible. Mm-hmm. Usually digital shows are less expensive and for obvious reasons, more accessible to disabled bodies. You're not having to worry about, is the venue accessible? Does it have stairs? Is there an accessible bathroom? You can go to, it's in your house, which is great. And so I think hopefully in the future, we'll see digital burlesque or digital performance art will stay, as well as in person. I know we talked about the ballet and like the opera and those big theaters, that you'll hopefully see those shows still happen live for those who can't afford to buy a ticket for $80 and can go and who want to go, people like me who love to dress up to go to the shows, but they'll also have an option to keep those performances streamed, hopefully for all of the performances, so that you have a wider audience that can get to it, and that those tickets will be less money so that younger human beings can get to it. People who are on tighter incomes can afford to see those shows, and that people who maybe just don't have the spoons that day to get up and go to a venue will be able to still partake in that art at a less expensive cost.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. And it also would add another element of documentation of the culture too.
It would, absolutely.
Huge as well, like thinking about like different subcultures that exist mostly online, like people are able to find their way to them, but more availability continually could be great for, not just burlesque, but a lot of different, cultural art forms.
And I think too, also being digital allows your not just your amount of audience to grow, but like geographically where your audience is from.
Right.
That's the great thing about digital shows right now is I'm in Seattle, but I can watch a show from Australia to England to New York. And I have done it quite a few times. And that's amazing because those are performers that I don't normally get the chance to see. So I'm growing my base of performers that I know. And so that like when they come to my town, I know who that person is.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So I can see them, or if I ever travel to where they're at, I can make sure to go look for one of their shows there, which is really awesome.
That is really awesome. And it feels like maybe digital performance is kind of the great equalizer, right? It makes the accessibility of your performance more available to folks for numerous reasons. And it makes art forms that might have been inaccessible to you because of like monetary hindrances or physical hindrances available to you. I mean, if people continue to do it, like I really hope you're right that the ballet and the opera and the symphony continue to provide some kind of digital availability of their performances for people who might not have 80 or $100 to go to a show, right?
Exactly. And I know like before, COVID, I made sure to put all of my video performances on my YouTube, which is great, but burlesque is considered adult art.
Oh, right.
So I can't monetize any of that. So having a digital format that I could maybe put them on where people could, like an archive where people could pay a small amount to go and see those is another way for a performer who usually, doesn't make a whole bunch of money off the performance to bring in a little more income.
Oh my God, that's crazy. I not to go down a rabbit hole of YouTube, but I mean, the fact that there are like 19-year-old boys playing Minecraft, making millions of dollars on YouTube, and like performers like you can't make any money is totally ridiculous to me. Like, I don't really understand how people are willing to pay all this money to watch boys play, Minecraft and beat each other with swords, swords.
Right. But I mean, but there are more and more platforms for that are available, thinking about like Patreon and OnlyFans.
Yeah,
and
that's
like,
true.
Where it's considered adult, content, but not necessarily all of it is like, super adult content.
No, I know you can make a lot of money on Patreon and probably on OnlyFans. I don't know how it equates to like, YouTube in its accessibility. Yeah. I mean, I
think it's just a matter of time.
Maybe,
as different platforms become more niche, and they can expand and change in what they're offering, YouTube will kind of become like the network news of
exactly. I think there'll be more mainstream content and like family friendly content. Whereas, like I have an OnlyFans, which, I don't make a lot, but it pays for my cell phone bill. So that's nice.
That's good.
But I know a lot of performers have also switched to not just performing online or providing like, I do more adult content on my OnlyFans because it's a nice outlet to have. But I know a lot of performers are teaching classes like makeup classes and exercise and stretching classes and costume making classes on their Patreons or their OnlyFans, which is amazing because that's a whole nother way to reach audience and share your knowledge, but also bring in an income when you can't do in-person classes.
Oh, that's a great idea too. Amy also had another comment. She said she thinks add performers pay up there with teachers pay in the makes no sense department.
Yeah.
Right?
Right? We pay like it's so valuable. Well, we find it, obviously teaching is super valuable because you're teaching our youth, right? And me
absolutely
is one of the most valuable things we have in the world, let alone in our country. And there's some of the lowest paid folks out there,
Yeah.
And it's super frustrating.
It is. I think teachers deserve so much more credit than what they get. I mean, we basically, as a society, have told them, you have to raise our children. You have to teach them manners. You have to teach them life skills. You basically have to be a therapist.
Right. You have to take care of them for 7 hours a day. I mean, and
we expect you to possibly take a bullet for our child under poverty wages.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
And here's your $50,000. Good luck.
I mean, if even $50,000.
Some places way less than that, right?
Yeah, and I think, I definitely think performance is very different from teaching because it doesn't come with, I think, as many responsibilities.
No.
I'm not taking a bullet for my audience member. Like, depends on the audience member. I might. But I think one thing that COVID has brought to light is how important the arts are with everyone streaming Netflix shows and reading books and watching movies. Those are all artists. And it's not just the performers, it's your lighting people, it's your stage crews, it's your Foley artists that make your sound, it's makeup artists, it's all kinds of things that go into that. And I, even as a performer, took it a little for granted before this, but now that I'm doing more online stuff, I'm now my own editor, I'm my own art director, I'm my own marketing director, and it's a lot of hats to wear. And I think society as a whole is starting to realize that like our arts deserve way more money. And that like fair is fair, like pay us what we ask.
Right. And also, like you were saying, think of all the people that the arts employs, not just the artist, right? Yeah. We're not just talking about the artist and the venue, but we're talking about everything that supports that art that is huge. I mean, if you're talking about performances like dance performances or ballet or the opera, the stuff that's behind the scenes that you don't even think about is hundreds of people, especially for like for theater or the opera. You're talking about, like you said, costumers, set designers. I mean, we have a client and friend of ours who's a set designer. He used to work at ACT, and he still is a set designer. But I mean, how do you have to find new ways to make money when there's no live performance, right? And so they're scrambling to make a living on top of the performers in this crazy world that we're living in with no live theater.
Yeah, I know. I was reading an article on Facebook a couple months ago talking about, if we don't do something to help our artists, we're looking at a huge art recession for like the next 5 to 7 years, because artists are going to be getting out, like people, all the support staff and artists themselves are going to be getting out of art because they have to pay bills. They have to pay the rent. They have to eat. They're going to be leaving doing art full time to take on other things. And so they won't have as much time to do these projects,
right.
that we normally have so much time to do.
Right. And it will take a long time for new folks to come into the scene, because why decide you're going to become a performer if you don't even know when you're going to be able to perform?
Exactly.
Like, so you're right. It's going to be a huge impact, with venues closing and people having to get jobs and people not choosing to make that leap. We could be looking at I love how you called it what did you call it? An arts recession.
Mm-hmm.
I love that, an arts recession. I mean, I don't love the idea of an arts recession, but I love that concept, right? Like, it is a recession, it is a, So, and that's really kind of scary for me as someone who's been like, I'm sure Roy, you feel the same way. Like, we're arts lovers. We're always before COVID.
Yeah. I was just thinking though, like, in regards to that too, like with more things currently being digital and helping like people having avenues to be sitting at home, finding new performers, finding new content, like that hopefully will also add to them wanting to go out and see those performers live. Them wanting to become audience members where maybe they weren't before.
That's true.
And also for the performers, like having that audience of like, whatever venue, like this is who's coming to see me, so like, I don't know. It's just, I'm hopeful that things will not be as dire, but I mean, we're living it in the moment.
Right.
Yep.
And that's the thing. Like you gotta give the money now if you want to stick around.
Right. And you have to support every part of the process, and the venues are super important as well, because I think we were talking about earlier, it's great if live performance comes back after COVID's over and people are ready and willing to perform, but there's no spaces. Right. There's not enough spaces for them to perform in because a bunch of venues have closed.
Yeah, I know Seattle lost so many venues.
Yeah, you mentioned the Columbia City Theater was closing.
It's so sad.
That's my favorite theater. I
feel hopefully someone buys it, like opens it back up, and
Well, that is the hope that right. As people transition and things close, and that new folks will come in and be able to resuscitate those businesses and support them down the road.
Yeah, I mean, so like it could be an amazing thing having. I know this sounds weird, but it could be kind of this awesome double-edged sword, is where you have spaces and local businesses close, but you will have hopefully the opportunity for people who haven't had the money in Seattle's, real estate market, like commercial real estate market, right. to open up and start new amazing art spaces right. and theaters and, galleries and things like that. So hopefully you'll see a shift a little bit going towards more art spaces in the city.
I hope so. I also hope we continue to see more like creativity and innovation, because I feel like sometimes when stuff like this does happen, like when the recession happened or like with COVID, that it gives people the opportunity to, because they're forced to think outside the box, to, mm-hmm. That tension creates the ability for new ideas and new things to spark.
Yeah. And I think one thing that you're going to see in the future, especially as everything opens back up little by little, is you're going to see maybe higher prices on tickets for in-person events, especially burlesque, but it will be such a smaller, more intimate, like it'll right. feel way more personal. And honestly, like a little more sexy, because it'll be maybe 20 people in an audience instead of 75. And so it'll feel like you're really getting that one-on-one time with a performer.
Anybody with that 6 feet at this moment is going to feel real personal.
Right. But it's how many people? 6 people.
Well, another thought too along those same lines is like if like with digital trends and building a digital or like building a social media based platform or like, like presence, maybe the venues are going to be a little more fluid, where it's like 2 weeks at this vacant space, but people are coming because they know about it, because they know about all the performers digitally. So it's less about the anchor hubs of performance and more about the like reputation of the group, as being available.
I mean, I know there used to be this amazing theater company. I don't think it's around anymore. And it was called Seattle Immersive Theater. And they did interactive theater pieces in different locations that fit whatever they were doing. And that was the coolest thing ever.
I like that idea. Like change our perception of where performance has to be, right?
Yeah.
To be a stage or a theater. It could be intimate, weirder,
Yes. I'm all for weird.
Weird, right. It could be outside. I know we talked about how outside is tough, but I love the idea of more people performing outside. I know it's
daytime burlesque.
What was it? It was White Center Pride 2 summers ago. Was that 2019?
That was 2019.
When they had Cookie and a bunch of others had a performance at Drunkies Two Shoes in their
outfit. Oh, fun!
It was so awesome.
Because it was like a bunch of like barbecue loving, biker people, and then like a bunch of kids, because it was all ages,
right?
And then like people that were right there for the performance, and like everybody was totally into it. Like everyone was like, "Hell yeah, this is where we want to be right now." It was really cool.
Yeah, I mean it was a great idea.
I've done burlesque over the winter of 2019. I did it in the lobby of the W Hotel.
Cool.
Like family friendly, no G-strings allowed.
Right.
But
still, right.
And that's such a fun, and it was all improv burlesque. Ruby Mimosa also produces that. Cool. But that was such a fun new experience and a way to introduce people to an art form that they may never normally see.
Right. Right. That's a great idea. I mean, I think once again, that's the kind of creativity I love to see, is like taking spaces that were never, originally meant to be performance spaces and figuring out how can we create these to be performance, because performance can happen anywhere, right?
Anywhere. Yeah.
I mean, one of my favorite things used to be to go to Inez and watch Tasha perform while I was eating Filipino food,
while serving Filipino food.
Right? So, like, I miss that. Like, I miss being able to having someone perform drag while I am eating my lumpia. I mean, like, what a great, or whatever it is. Like, I think that's like, we have to change our concept of what we think performance is and have it be less like this less rigid, formal thing. And maybe this way to do that.
Well, and I see Amy says that she's performed burlesque at a friend's memorial.
Oh,
which I think, I've seen people do it at memorials. I've seen burlesque at weddings.
Yeah. Well,
which I think is so much fun. It's a way to
we had Kitty Baby perform at our wedding.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard of people having burlesque performers at memorials because that was kind of the like what they wanted, and it was something that they were a huge patron of. So why not? Like,
yeah, totally.
I feel like
anniversary parties, things like that. I think it's a really great way to support the arts and incorporate it into huge life events for people who are huge supporters of, different art forms.
And I feel like as far as the venue situation goes in Seattle, that has been an issue since I moved here in 2002, where it's like venues pop up, venues fall down, just because like real estate prices are effing expensive.
True. Yeah.
And so like you're constantly seeing people shifting around and trying to do things. I think, if any city's going to do it, it's going to be Seattle, because there are so many people that have done this for so long. Thinking about like, what is it? Vanishing Seattle is, it's an Instagram account. It used to be a blog. But they were just talking about Our Place and how Our Place is closed.
Right, it's closed.
They're looking for a new venue, and then it's like, oh, but in 1989 they were an entirely different spot.
Right.
And just thinking about like things shifting. I don't know. I am excited and I'm here for it. just because I think that it adds to the inventiveness. You know, like you guys have been saying this whole time, like it's adding more to the story and to the performance than, you know, being like very stuck in like, no, this is where we perform. This is what the stage looks like. These are the 5 lights we have, like deal with it, you know?
I think some of my favorite shows are bar shows where like, I know it's closed now, but it was the Cursed Oak in Belltown did a weekly show. And that was so much fun because, you know, the audience was 2 feet away from you. And sometimes they had no idea what was going on until your boobs were out.
No, I love that. I mean, I really miss intimate performance, right? I mean, like I find it feels like in the past, like 20 years, I have seen very few like huge stage shows and mostly done like small performance, like, you know, even when we go to see like, you know, live music, we kind of steer away from big, huge venue shows because they just don't feel like, you know, it doesn't feel the same. Like I really would rather see someone in an intimate setting than, you know, sit in a giant theater and watch like a rock band. I mean, you know, yes, great, sure. Yep. The Rolling Stones are amazing, or like, I don't know, you know, some god of rock or goddess of rock performance would be great to see. But, you know, like, unless you're the lucky person who has a front row seat, you're watching someone on a screen.
Right.
And I think a huge shift within society in general is we're seeing like people want more of like a tailored experience. Yes. They want to feel like they're getting an experience for their hard-earned money.
Right.
And so I love the idea of smaller, weirder venues that really feel like this huge step outside.
Yeah. And that means that's not just like, I'm not also thinking like theater. Like I love the idea of seeing theater in a place that's not a theater. You know,
yes, absolutely.
You know, that's like not a traditional, you sit, you know, in a bleacher and you look at something on a stage, you know, where you're laughing.
One of my favorite visual arts galleries that I still have not been invited to is called The Freezer. I'm pretty sure that's the name of it. And it's a refrigerator and freezer that live in this artist's backyard. And it's appointment only, and you come and all of the artwork fits inside of the freezer.
Oh my God, that's ridiculous. I love that.
You know, or like, what was it? Ghost Gallery they were part of a phone booth for a while. And so the phone booth had like 18 panels in it, and each panel was made by a different visual artist. And that was the gallery, and it would move around town.
See, I
love so you could see it in different places. Yeah.
It's super creative.
Yeah, right. You know, and yeah, I don't know. I think like that's what I mean by like Seattle has always, or not always, in the time that I've lived in Seattle, we've always battled with space and always, you know, like that's been the hardest thing to find is a space to create and a space to perform. And so like, I don't know, I think having a digital backbone of your audience gets to you, not based on your name on the marquee, but based on your name in your own, generating, you know, your own name, and then they follow you based on where you tell them to go, not where, you know, the venue tells them who's going to show up.
I mean, I just went to an art show. Like a friend of mine had an art exhibit on the new Pier 62 at the waterfront.
Cool.
And I mean, it was small, but it was so cool to go out and see these lit up, beautiful old photos from different, you know, minority cultures and communities in Seattle on this pier.
Yeah.
Really cool. And that, like, I mean, it was so popular, it got extended a whole month.
Cool.
Because it was something you could do outside, you know, and social distance, but still go and have this really fun experience.
Cool.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I mean, I would love stuff like that. I do know that there's always going to be that section of like art goers who like likes the veil to be thick between the performer and themselves, right? There are tons of people who are uncomfortable with being in that intimate space with performers, or that close up, or people like breaking the fourth wall and like trying to interact with them, you know, and those people.
I mean, we talked about this the other day. That's me a lot of the time. I don't like being sweated on. I don't like being stared in the eye. Like, but like also, if you have a digital option for that, what better way than to be able to experience it from across town, across country, you know, like time zones away and like still be a part of it if you want that division.
Right.
I mean, it's also a great option for people who have huge social anxiety that are like, please don't talk to me, don't look at me. You know, you can still interact, but like no one's gonna breathe on, no one's gonna touch them, no one's gonna, you know, pull them outside of their comfort zone and trigger that anxiety.
Right.
And so people that normally wouldn't go see art will now go and see it, because they can do it in their jammies in their living room.
Yeah, and I think eventually, like at some point when people get back into that comfort zone of being in a bigger venue, like there will always be people who will keep going to the ballet and the opera and the, you know, Avenue Theater who like will support that at some point when they're more comfortable being right. Me too, right? Like I like it all. I don't care. But I do think it might be a longer time for that type of performance to get back in than for the smaller, intimate, quirky, outdoor, you know, 25 person.
I wonder though. Thinking about the Roaring 20s after the Spanish flu, like I mean, that was the course of what, 4 years, like. You know, before like everyone was right back to doing what they were doing. I imagine that if this has an end date, like if they're, you know, if this pandemic is under control, it's going to flip like a switch.
Yeah.
I think it's going to go right back to being crowded, you know, places.
I mean, I think full live theater and like live performance will be the very last, it's going to be one of the last things to come back. But hopefully when we can start having smaller shows, people will fill those seats.
I hope so.
That start moving up to bigger stuff. But I think once you know the floodgates are open and we can actually do it, it's going to be a free for all.
Well, stay tuned, people.
So many parties.
Stay tuned. Join the party when the floodgates open, and you have to let us know as soon as you start performing live again, where we can come see you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm performing live again on the 27th. That's what I'm doing on the 27th.
Oh, awesome.
I'm doing a live show at Bad Jimmy's in Ballard.
Oh, outside?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Oh,
I'm hosting the 27th
of February.
Yep.
Wow,
that's awesome.
Okay, that sounds.
So is that information on your website? Then is that the best place to find that?
I can put it on my website.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Great.
Well, just thinking about like, because people are going to watch this and then want to know how to get in touch with you or how to like follow what you're doing. So, you know, just try to throw a plug in there.
Yeah, definitely let's throw a plug in there. This has been so much fun chatting with you, Carson. I'm so excited that you came on the show, and I love having this conversation about arts and quirky art forms and, you know, innovation in art and where we think art's going to go in the next few years. And
I'm super excited to see where it goes.
I'm super excited too. I mean, you have to try and look. I mean, it's been such a weird time. I think you really have to try and find the positive in anything like this that happens, right? You just have to. And I think there will be tons of weird, innovative stuff that comes out of this when we start to see live performance again. So, and we have a bunch of shows that you recommended that we talked about. That we're going to put in the notes and put in the blog post, because there's going to be a blog post for the podcast of this show. So if you missed it, you can listen, and then you can catch Carson live at what's it called? Bad
Jimmy's Brewing in Ballard.
Brewing in Ballard. That's like a tongue twister. Bad Jimmy's Brewing in Ballard on the 27th. Who else is coming with you?
So the show is called Behind the Garage Door, and it is produced by Moxie Blue, who is a local performer. And I believe it's me, like a huge Seattle like icon, Whisper de Corvo, I believe, is performing. Pucks Aplenty. I believe Pat Smear Burlesque is performing. So
fabulous.
A lot of really cool like Seattle performers.
Oh my God, that sounds awesome. Well, we're gonna try and we'll definitely try. I know live, outdoor live. It's gonna be a little nippy, so we're all gonna have to.
We've all got the clothes for. Isn't everything outdoors at the moment?
Right.
That's true.
Bring your money, throw your money on them.
I will bring my dollars.
Thank you again for joining us today. This has been
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been awesome. And thanks everyone, Amy and everyone else who joined us today.
Thank you.
Now we are not having a show next week. And then our first show on March will be March 3rd, which is my birthday. And
your birthday.
2 days after Roy's birthday.
That's right.
We'll be celebrating. We're gonna have a team birthday celebration show. So
it'll be kind of fun.
Thanks, Amy. We love you too. I love that Amy has been like just hanging out with us.
I know Amy's killing
it. She's here for us. I love it.
Much appreciated.
And don't forget to join us, Amy, on March 3rd. And then we're going to a once a month show. We already know in April that we're going to be interviewing or talking to Ace, the architect, who's running for Seattle mayor.
Ooh.
So
yeah, that's going to be a great show. I'm very excited to start talking about mayoral stuff. After the 7-minute State of the City address, what the hell? Like, just be gone. Go away.
God. I didn't even listen.
$50 vouchers in the mail, and I'm so excited to mail those off.
Oh my God. Yeah, that'll be interesting. We're gonna have a very interesting conversation with Ace, and and it's gonna be interesting summer talking about the mayor's race. So stay tuned for that, folks, and a bunch of other stuff, I'm sure. Awesome. So, thanks again, y'all. Thanks, Carson.
Have a great rest of your Wednesday, everyone.
See you soon.